begin this session. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all the participants who are joining us in this webinar on countering the People's Republic of China's influence operation in democracies. And it is being organized by Red Lantern Analytica in collaboration with the Center for Northeast Asian Studies of O.P. Jindal Global University, Haryana. I'm the moderator for this session, Siddharth, and I'll now like to invite Kritika Rajput, Research Associate, Red Lantern Analytica, to extend a formal welcome to all our speakers. Kritika, if you can hear me, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Good evening, everyone. I, Kritika, from Red Lantern Analytica, welcome you to today's webinar on the topic of critical importance, countering People's Republic of China's influence operations in democracies. We are pleased to have collaborated with like-minded institutions, Center for Northeast Asian Studies at O.P. Jindal Global University in organizing this webinar. Today's theme of the webinar, on one hand, sheds light on the complex and interconnected world we live in, whereas on the other hand, it highlights the dynamic landscape where democratic nations face the strategic and multifaceted influence operations conducted by PRC, primarily to undermine the democratic practices. China has conventionally used information as a tool to political warfare, to target CCP's internal and external adversities, and to counter the negative perceptions of China's increasing assertiveness globally. Some of the tactics that PRC has employed for information operations include the creation, the manipulation, or the selective use of information to discredit the country's international standings, or to discredit or to advance the blatant territories, and to present itself. These operations are not only restricted, but spans to various domains, including the political, economic, and technological, along with the cultural sectors, with the potential to undermine the sovereignty and the democratic principles that are fundamental to our societies. We have already seen such examples where PRC has tried to influence the election process in many countries by deploying misinformation campaigns. So today's session will focus on these influence operations against the democracies around the world, comprehensively understanding their scope, the mechanism, and to explore the effective strategies to counter them. Our distinguished speakers bring a wealth of knowledge and experience from diverse disciplines, including the policymaking to academia and to industry experts. With this context, I would now like to invite Mr. Siddharth Ghosh to introduce our speakers and to moderate the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kritika. So our first speaker for this session will be Dr. Lennon Chang. And before his address, I'd like to introduce briefly to all our participants. Dr. Chang is Associate Professor of Cyber Risk and Policy in the Center for Cyber Resilience and Trust and School of Information Technology at Deakin University. Currently, he is a visitor with the Cybercrime Observatory at the Australian National University and a fellow with the International Cybercrime Research Center at Simon Fraser University, Canada. He co-founded and led as the Vice Chairman for Asia Pacific Association of Technology and Society, and he is also the founder of Cyber Bacon, Myanmar Cyber Security Awareness Campaign, and the chair of the Melbourne Taiwan Film Festival. With these words, I now like to invite Dr. Lennon Chang for his address. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Siddharth. I'll share my screen.
Sure, sir.
Okay, good. Technology issue. They don't allow me to share unless I restart my computer again. But it doesn't matter. I'll send these are the PowerPoint later. It's only a couple of pictures I want to show about what I'm talking today. And I'm Lennon Chang. Today I'm going to talk about Taiwan as a battlefield of for cyber war and disinformation. And thanks, Siddhartha, for the introduction. I'm also now the chairperson of Double Think Lab in Taiwan, which is one of the a CSO here in countering disinformation and China to understand China impact in the world. So we all know the complicated relationship between Taiwan and China. and it is the most sensitive security issues in the Asia-Pacific region. China, the People's Republic of China, claims Taiwan is a renegade province of China, which need to be reunified, while most of the Taiwanese see Taiwan as an independent country. In recent years, China has increased its military pressure against Taiwan. We see a large-scale military exercise was held in 2022, and there also been an increasing political pressure on Taiwan. The number of countries that recognize Taiwan as a nation has dropped from 22 in 2015, and now it's only 12 in 2024. China has used this way to disseminate disinformation that the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, the ruling party, government is not incapable of maintaining its alliance, and formal dialogue between Taiwan and China need to resume, despite China's insistence that they will only do this under the condition that Taiwan recognizes that Taiwan is there's one China and Taiwan is part of China. So while it's unclear whether China will launch a conventional war against Taiwan, we see actions being taken to cause conflict and fear within Taiwan and among Taiwanese, which will help in the future if China really wants to launch a conventional war. But my argument here is it possible that China and Taiwan are already at war, albeit not a conventional one? So cyberspace actually provided a platform for this type of new form of war. While there might be different views of whether cyber war is real war, cyberspace has been identified as the fifth domain of cyber warfare, not only because that we rely heavily on cyberspace for missions, including military defense missions, but also because of the disruptions and exploitation of critical infrastructure and public opinions can cause societal instability. Notwithstanding the great focus on cyber defense capacity, we see that cybercrime, cyber attacks, and disinformation campaigns are becoming dominant tactics that Chinese government is using against Taiwan. Cybercrime, as most of you will know, generally understood to include conventional crime facilitated by computers and technologies, such as identity crime and information theft, web page defacement, and dissemination of malicious and damaging messages, or even hate speeches or bullying. Cybercrime can also be in the form of cyber attacks, such as distributed denial of service attacks and advanced persistent threat attacks, which can weaken the power of the government and the country targeted and cause physical damage by interrupting the functioning of critical infrastructure, such as banking, energy, telecommunications, and water systems. In Taiwan, cybercrime is regulated by criminal code and are usually dealt by the law enforcement agencies. Our previous Taiwanese president Tsai Ing-wen declared cybersecurity is national security in 2018 under the 2018 National Information and Communication Security Strategy Report, and emphasized it again in 2022 report. It is now agreed that some types of cybercrime can be used to damage national security and thus be viewed as a form of cyber warfare, especially if they are state-sponsored and organized. The line between cybercrime and cyber war is becoming blurred, as cybercrime can contribute not only to the preparation stage of cyber war, but becoming a critical part of it. So in the past few years, we see Taiwan has experienced this disproportionately high number of cyber attacks. Senior government officials in Taiwan, including, say, the Secretary of National Security Council, has publicly revealed Taiwan received more than 5 million attacks per day. Figures from the US cybersecurity firms also confirm that Taiwan is a hotspot for malicious actors. We are experiencing a huge numbers of malicious attacks in the Asia-Pacific region. The visit to Taiwan by the then Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, on 2nd of August 2022 was particularly a significant case in terms of the number and the nature of cyber attacks and disinformation campaign. Well, we see the Taiwanese government said that there was a significant number of cyber attacks on public and private institutions and disinformation campaigns during her visit. They will also describe the disinformation created by People's Liberation Army and disseminated by the Chinese media as a cognitive war or war without gun smoke. Pelosi visits see increase of numbers of distributed denial of service attacks, that is, sending a significant number of messages or requests to a website at the same time to flood the server to prevent users from accessing the site. Both central and local governments, as well as private organizations' websites, are targeted by denial of service attacks. It is clear these attacks are not only intended to interfere with communication between the government and its people, but also cause chaos more generally. Website defacement is also observed during Pelosi's visit. For example, this is the image I was going to show you, but I can't now. An image of the China's flag was placed on a page of the website of the Kaohsiung city government, the second largest city in Taiwan. And the word, there's only one China, of course, in Chinese character, were placed on some web pages. Information screening at some of the train stations and convenience stores were targeted with messages such as, that's the translation of the message, not my word. The all witches visit to Taiwan is a serious provocation to Taiwan government. And warmonger Pelosi go out of Taiwan. This kind of message was posted on the public information screen at train station and convenience store. So this actually gives a very important message here. This shows the public information message can be, the public information messaging services can be easily hacked and replaced by threatening messages that could cause fear to the society and cause fear and societal anxiety. So this kind of screen information message dissemination channels were not previously regarded as critical infrastructure and had not been seen as a priority for cybersecurity protection by the government. But now we need to reconsider when we are defining the term critical infrastructure, whether we should include all these kind of private sectors in the critical infrastructure protection to avoid the dissemination of disinformation or to avoid the creation of chaos in Taiwan. And what's interesting is that all this website defacement happened on the same day the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense was subjected to serious cyber denial of service attacks. While there's no evidence showing that the connection between the dissemination of disinformation about the airport and the denial of service attack of the Ministry of National Defense, the coincidence that leads to the suspicion that the two incidents was coordinated to cause the widespread of fear. This also claimed that on PTT that Taiwan's largest online forum, the Pelosi was actually paid by Taiwanese government, or paid a huge amount of money by Taiwanese government for her visit to Taiwan. And this kind of statement, of course, was condemned by the Taiwan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they will publicize blaming China for behind all the dissemination of information and call this as again cognitive wars, and asking people not to become a collaborator by disseminating disinformation. Back to the election this year, we see we had the presidential and legislative election in Taiwan. Extensive disinformation campaign were circulated with support of artificial intelligence, AI, mostly targeting the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, which views the Taiwan is a sovereign country and not part of the People's Republic China. The most significant one was the dissemination of about 300 pages ebook called The Secret History of Tsai Ing-wen. In an attempt to undermine her and the public trust in DPP, the book claimed that the mother of Taiwan's 14th and 15th president, Tsai Ing-wen, was a prostitute, and that Tsai falsified her PhD degree. And the reason why it's been connected back to China is there's evidence that they use CapCut, an AI software developed by the ByteDance company, a company owned by China internet technology company Douyin. Short video featuring the book were created with fake news anchors and AI-generated voice-overs. The videos were then widely spread and rapidly disseminated on YouTube, X, TikTok, and other platforms, and were promptly replaced if they are deleted or taken down by platforms or accounts, or if their accounts are banned. So as I said, well, DoubleThink, my organization is looking into the detail of all those dissemination of information, and we believe the campaign was handiwork of the Chinese Communist Party. As a lot of evidence shows that it has a lot of simplified Chinese behind it, and it's definitely a organized syndicate. Without government support, they might not be able to disseminate it quickly and easily. There were also unsubstantiated claims circulated that several DPP candidates and the government officials were having extramarital affairs accompanied by images generated by AI technologies. Fake videos falsely showing the president candidate Lai Ching-te and Guo Wen-je making comments on various issues were also circulated, presumably with the aims to influence the result of the election. And in response to the multifaceted threats, as we mentioned, Taiwan government are starting to combat disinformation and even cyber attacks seriously. So one of the things, as we've just mentioned, is the launch of the cybersecurity as a national security and the strategies that has been publicized. However, the country existing cybersecurity regulation primarily targeting cybercrime. Because of the borderline between cybercrime and cyber warfare, Taiwan needs to adopt more holistic approach, and this should encompass preventative measures, rapid response strategies, and enhance public-private and international collaborations. And we see Taiwanese government is doing quite a bit on that now to avoid a serious attack on the sea cables. Taiwan is now developing its own satellite internet services, and this to be an alternative of Elon Musk's Starlink to reduce the potential harm from served underwater internet cables. And working with several governments, including AIT, the government is now promoting cybersecurity frameworks and they do a lot of trainings on cybersecurity and other issues to establish the cyber capacity and cybersecurity awareness, not only in Taiwan, but also in the region. And one thing I would like to mention at the end is we see a lot of non-government organizations such as DoubleThink, COFACT, and the Taiwan Fact Check that are also playing significant roles through real-time monitoring of foreign influence and disinformation campaigns and fact-checking services. However, with the advance in technologies, cyber attacks and disinformation will still evolve. This is why other components are essential to build a comprehensive cyber defense strategy. This includes the increased investment in cybersecurity infrastructure, fostering digital literacy, and promoting responsible online behavior. Only through collective vigilance and concerted efforts can Taiwan and the region safeguard its democratic value in the face of relentless cyber threats. I'll stop it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your address. And now moving forward to the second speaker, we have Dr. Roger Liu as the speaker. And before his address, I'll give a brief introduction of his. Dr. Roger Liu is Associate Professor of Political Science at Flame University. with a field of expertise in international relations and a special focus on topics such as war, great power rivalry, and India's foreign relations and East Asian politics. Since August 2023, he has served as the CEO at the Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology, which is a subsidiary of National Science and Technology Council of Taiwan. Dr. Liu is also a corresponding research fellow at the Center for Globalization and Peace Research, Suzhou University, Taiwan, and a research fellow at the Center for Southeast Asia Studies, National Changchi University, Taipei. Sir, over to you for your address.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me? Well, yeah, like Lennon said, the technology is an issue. So I try to make sure that you guys can see my screen, because whenever I try to, let's see, presenter view. All right. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen. It's perfectly
Okay,
visible
and
to us.
you don't need to see me. Okay.
We can also see you,
right.
sir.
Okay, great. So I think I will be building on what Lennon has shared with you regarding the cyber attacks recently launched against the Taiwanese society after the visit of Nancy Pelosi, where he used it as an example. And I would like to introduce some kind of ideas what actually is the party state, I mean the CCP and PRC, the combination of that is doing against Taiwan, and what's their logic, and what actually is the true picture of the offensives. So the whole world has been paying attention to Taiwan right now. So well, I just like Siddhar has introduced me. I have been serving in Fleming University for from 2017 till 2023 for 6 years. During that time and after a short period, I've been remaining close contact with think tanks here in India. So I have participated in the Resina Dialogue earlier this year. And then I also have attended some of the conferences hosted by the National Maritime Foundation, and as well as the Pune University. So, in the conferences, actually, people are talking about and expressing their concerns and worries that China may attack Taiwan in different years. So we have different versions of stories. Earlier, maybe 2024, 2025, 2027, different years. But so this is what people care about, whether China is going to attack Taiwan. Well, I will say militarily, it's highly unlikely, because it's very hard to launch a serious amphibious military operation against Taiwan if the final goal is to occupy Taiwan. So that will be hard. But for the future, I assure you that you will be seeing a lot of military operations announced against Taiwan by the party state. But instead of being used as the serious military tactics, which is designed to solve the Taiwan issue, according to them, by the military means, this actually is part of the orchestrated offensives against Taiwan from the CCP. So I don't think the likelihood that they are going to launch a comprehensive offensive is really large. And this actually has been, if you are following the news, you will find that recently there's a scoop news story by the Financial Times of UK revealing that Xi Jinping himself doesn't actually have the intention to conquer Taiwan, because he declared that it actually is a trap set up by the US to ruin everything that China has achieved nowadays. No matter what, I don't think it's likely, but what we are seeing here is that the CCP actually used the military operation as part of their tactics, which I term as a combination and orchestration of four things. The carrot, the stick, the net, and the needle. So the carrot is the traditional benefit the Chinese Communist Party has been offering to its Taiwanese audiences and targets by offering either the benefits of the market, the opportunities of job for different professions, for their what they call the Taiwanese compatriots to work in China, to invest in China, any kind of business opportunities in China, to the stick, which is refers to the military actions or threats that we have been seeing nowadays. So these are the carrot and the stick. Actually, is the classic way of manipulate their Taiwan policy towards Taiwan. But recently, they have added up two things. The first is the net, and the second is the needle. All right. Net refers to the relations network built up between mainland China and the Taiwanese society. The Republic of China government was relocated from mainland China to Taiwan in 1949, and the 49ers, or the mainlanders, we call them, still have some connections back in mainland. So some of these connections still remain nowadays, and it has been used by the Chinese Communist Party to spread the news or to manipulate the relations. And there are new relations being built up after the open up and reform of China in 1979, when China used the market to lure the Taiwanese businessmen to set up the factories over there. So this is a newly built relationship and part of the network. And the final thing is the needle, which is the new thing that the CCP, the parties, they have learned from the combination of modern techniques or technology, including internet and all these kind of social media portals that we are using nowadays to conduct what we call the disinformation warfare. So you will see that actually this is the combination of the four things. I will be jumping over this, but what I'm going to show you is the change of the Taiwan policy from the Chinese Communist Party. So during the old, this is a new version of that. The new version, as you can see here, the red highlighted part is that the CCP actually now has been more proactive in developing what they call the patriotic pro-unification forces inside of Taiwan. All right. So this is what we called the local collaborators that they are developing. And this is the old version, as you can see here. The old version is delineated in the CCP regulations on United Front Network, United Front Work. This is the 2015 version. It says, how the CCP is going to influence what's happening in Taiwan. They are going to consolidate the political, economic, cultural, and social foundations that will deepen the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. So this is a more passive way to create an environment which is favorable of peaceful unification. But as you can see here, in the new version, they are more proactive. They are developing the people inside. So who are the people inside? As you can see here, actually, I have some categories here. So CCP tried to establish and define the social relations inside of Taiwan because that's the only way that you can be influential inside of Taiwan. My argument is that cyber attacks or any, internet offensive through internet can only be minimal without the existence of local collaborators inside or on the island of Taiwan. That's the most important thing. You have to have the real person who can be the sympathizers of the CCP. You have to cultivate and install the people inside of the political system of Taiwan to make it work. So these are the five major groups you can see here, which can be defined as local collaborators. So the first one is the sympathizers. Well, these are more like the pro-unification parties, like KMT, you might have heard about, or Kuomintang, the nationalist, those who are the descendants of the 49ers relocated from China to Taiwan. They have some kind of sentiments about China. And another part is the Pan-Green Party. The DPP supporters, still the CCP or the Party State of China has to take care of them. So how are they going to do it? They're going to find out who have some kind of business connections or whose products depends on Chinese market and work on them. But for now, as the cutting off and the reduction of reliance of the Taiwanese products on the Chinese market, well, the number of this group of people actually is shrinking. And the third one is through religious organizations, because China and Taiwan actually shares the same religious practice. For example, there's a sea goddess Mazu. The Mazu worshipping culture actually is being co-shared by the Taiwanese people and the Chinese people, especially from the province of Fujian. So every year, a pilgrimage will be held, and Taiwanese people will be visiting China for that. And this actually is being used as a cultural platform of the Chinese Communist Party. And to the youth, the Chinese Communist Party has been trying to provide the market and the job opportunities to the younger generation of Taiwan, but currently these effects are diminishing because as the Chinese economy grows, becomes worsened, and the Taiwanese economy goes up, well, more and more people will prefer to stay in Taiwan for their job. And finally, it's the media. So in Taiwan, well, like in any democracies, the media has been separated and distributed along the political spectrum. So of course, there are pro-China media portals, and these are being used by the Chinese Communist Party as well by offering them the privileges of covering news in China. But the key here, actually, recently, what happens in Taiwan is that, well, the Chinese Communist Party has been using some kind of divide and rule tactics by inviting the opposition parties. Although they are opposition parties, but they are the majority in the legislative yuan, which is the parliament of Taiwan. So the party whip, Fu Kunqi, who is also a local politician in the eastern county of Hualien, which you can see here. He was invited along with a delegation from the KMT to China in April. And he met Xi Jinping and all the high-level party cadres. And they had a conversation that most of the people in Taiwan don't know many about the details. So they might have reached a deal, but we don't know. The eastern county of Hualien is, well, they rely heavily on tourism. So the Chinese tourist is a very important source of revenues. And after the COVID and the tension between Taiwan and China, actually, China has banned the tourists from entering Taiwan for years. But if they want, they actually can provide this as a benefit or a privilege to those who support China's policy, the KMT magistrates, or the lawmakers from the local. So this actually is what they're doing, but it's hard for us to say this in Taiwan because these are the opposition parties, and if you criticize them too much, actually they will try to that there will be some reactions from them. And at the same time, China is also inviting the retired government officials. For example, the former president Ma Ying-jeou was invited to go to China, in different times of the year, and he now becomes the major sympathizer of Chinese policy, and he becomes the most critical political figure in Taiwan against current government's policy. So all in all, the Chinese offensives are like that. So it's a combination of social networks plus cyber network. So like I said, you have to have the real person, real sympathizers inside the Taiwanese society and the political system to work, right? So without the local collaborators, the effects of cyber attack alone are diminished. So everything is a combination of the four things all together being used as what they called, well, if you remember what Sun Tzu has said, to subdue your enemy without using the real force actually is the best strategy of all. All right, and the Chinese Communist Party is following this strategy. So military exercise actually are part of the psychology ops instead of the real tactics that they are going to use to conquer Taiwan. All right, so the whole thing is working like that. First, the CCP will develop some local collaborators in the society and the political system, like I have mentioned to you. And then they will create some kind of events which may look really scary. And the local collaborators then will stand out and say, well, this is not good, so we should change our China policy and we should adopt a more peaceful way. And maybe we should reach a deal with the Chinese Communist Party, which will be good for the Taiwanese people, in a peaceful way. And then they will create some political pressure. And at the same time, the CCP is using that to delegitimize the governance of the current government, which is DPP. All right. So this is like a cycle. So I think in the future, you will see more and more things like that. And actually, the goals of the CCP is like that. Well, this actually is an evolution of what they have been doing for the future. From the past to the future. So during the old times, when Mao and Deng was there, they tried to rely more on the real military operations. And when Jiang Zemin becomes the general secretary, he tried to leverage the great powers like the US and the Taiwanese business people. But we can see the evolution and the refinement of the Chinese policy towards Taiwan. Now it may look scary, but I think for the following future, the more likely will be it will be the combination of the four things. So it will be an orchestration of all the tactics. I think I will be stopping. Oh, before I stop, I will show you a picture over here that I have participated recently. I think the beauty of the Taiwanese society to resist the offensive of the CCP is that we have very smart people who understands really very much what they should do to counter the offensives from the CCP and their local collaborators. So what you see here is a series of civilian gatherings around the legislative yuan against the passing of unreasonable laws that the Taiwanese society has been fighting against recently. So during the weekend, actually, aware citizens will gather automatically on themselves, trying to express their angers and oppositions against unreasonable legislations. So this is what you see over here. All right, so I think I will stop here and we can discuss later.
Thank you, Dr. Lu. And moving on to our third speaker, it is Dr. Amechi Anakuwe, who is from Nigeria and is an executive director of CEDANAC Resources. He is a political economist with a PhD in political economy and research interest on developmental issues. With this interest, he authored the book called The Politics of Economic Regulation in Nigeria, which covers the dynamics of public and private sector rules and regulation of the Nigerian economy. Dr. Amechi, if you can hear me, over to you. We cannot hear you, sir. If you can just check on your audio. You are perfectly visible to us, but your audio is not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now, sir. Please go ahead.
That's not a delay. Okay, good day to everyone. My pleasure to be here and be part of this webinar. I've listened to some of the presentations and I was just smiling within myself. And I was saying, it's almost a similar pattern across the globe. Chinese malign influence and weakening tendencies over democracy, like the Taiwan experience, not far different, not very much different from the Nigerian experience. But I'll try to see if I can use specific country experience in Nigeria to illustrate that position. Well, China's influence over Nigeria has continued to expand over the years. They have continued to have foothold on the Nigerian state, including its people. But I can tell you that perhaps due to some pushbacks, due to some resistance, even though it may not have reduced, but at least I can say it has stagnated. Perhaps that's the first step towards reduction and elimination, stagnation of the expansion. And so they have targeted different sectors of the economy. You have of the society, I mean. You have the political side, the economic side. You have the media, you have the civil society. You have the citizenry. Well, for the political class, China's attitude towards Nigeria's democracy is one we have noticed has exerted negative influence on the nature and pattern of democracy and democratic processes in Nigeria. China has a closed society. Rights are not guaranteed, liberties are violated, and citizens are subjugated to the dictates of the Communist Party committee and all that. There are no openness, there are no transparency, there are no free speech. Some of Nigerian politicians, especially those in political offices, who are readily welcome to China. Chinese doors are wide open for this set of citizens. They bring them in on tours, they bring them in on visits and all that. And in the process, they imbibe that anti-democratic culture of the Chinese government and try to import it into the Nigerian political system. For instance, whenever there is a move by the Nigerian government to introduce obnoxious policies or programs, for instance, in the past, unsuccessful efforts to begin a process of stricter regulation of the social media, government officials, politicians will always make reference to China, that they are using China as the basis, as the standard for freedom of press, for freedom of speech, and everything. They tell you, go to China, you won't see this. Go to China, you won't have free use of every social media app, platform, blah, 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 blah. Go to China, this happens, that doesn't happen. So when it's time to justify an anti-democratic, obnoxious legislation, policy, or program, due to their excessive exposure to Chinese anti-democratic culture, they try to force it down the Nigerian political system and society as the standard. China maintains what I call zero tolerance to democratic practices in Nigeria. It has demonstrated zero tolerance and complete apathy to issues of human rights violations. Chinese government and its officials will tell you, we don't care much about your internal affairs. We don't care about how bad or how good your home government is. We're only here for cooperation, we're only here for business, and we're only here for other cultural relations. In a situation where other countries are issuing statements condemning certain obnoxious, repressive policies, actions, or programs of home governments here, Chinese will keep mute. They are ready to dine with anybody in power in Nigeria, notwithstanding the nature of governance that party or politicians or group of politicians are enthroning in Nigeria. They keep a blind eye during the last general election, for instance. The last general election was one of the worst in Nigeria's history. Intimidation of voters in several parts of the country, in opposition strongholds, use of state apparatus to suppress opposition and their supporters and their voters and sympathizers, lack of neutrality and objectivity on the part of the judiciary, the electoral umpire, the security agencies, where other major world powers issue statements even before the election, insisting that the right processes be followed, and even after the election, questioning and condemning these anti-democratic practices. China will keep quiet. Why? Because it cannot afford, in its thinking, to lose the support and sympathy of would-be government. So they can compromise on rights, liberties, privileges of Nigerians in as much as they are in good terms with the government in Nigeria. So this practice of importing the Chinese democratic culture is what one trend that we have noticed, and some of us and other like minds have worked seriously to counter, and to some limited extent, some appreciable extent, I mean, we are making some progress. China has also made a capture of most of the political parties there. Often and on, you see a delegation from the Communist Party of China arrive, take a tour of the leading political parties, meet the officials, and in the process, they try to influence the ideology. They try to establish contacts that are manipulative in nature. Just like the political class, they also open their doors to China and make sure that they maintain this influence. Same strategy, same tactics China has also used with the media, the civil society, and the citizenry. The last speaker talked about the practice of PRC in inviting journalists over, organizing tours, study tours of China and all that, and in the process trying to sell that Chinese agenda to them, change their perception, and try to manipulate their reportage of issues concerning Chinese interests. Most of the times, journalists who have been beneficial of these tours, fully sponsored tours, when issues of reportage concerning China is on the front burner, you see a hydrated moderation of it. They tend to suppress facts just to advance Chinese interests. Same thing with university lecturers, lecturers of tertiary institutions, professors. It's rare to get to any of the almost 300 universities in Nigeria, and you don't find up to 10 professors who have been to China at the invitation of the Chinese government. When they come back, this idea, as they are molding, building the young folks, the future leaders, they, in the process, try to impute this Chinese ideology into their minds. The Chinese have established on pilot basis the Confucius Institute in some of our universities. They have established centers for special study of the Confucius as the way of life. They have succeeded in these institutes, learning of Chinese language, exchange program for the students are things you readily see. Just like with Taiwan, a lot of exchange programs, invitation for students, undergraduate, but mostly postgraduates, for fully sponsored studies in China. In that way, you begin to see a tilt in their thinking, in their action towards China. In the media sphere, same way. Is they usually have a network of local sympathizers in Nigeria. They maintain a strong network, have periodic meetings, use formal and mostly informal methods to ensure that their reportage of China issues or issues affecting China are indeed manipulated in such a way that it will suit their interests. And so it's the same thing we're seeing in the other aspects of our economy. For instance, in the commercial retail outlets, we have seen an entrance of Chinese interests, Chinese businesses, registered, unregistered, trying to dominate the market, using corrupt means to acquire fake licenses, and using many forms of tactics in trying to capture the market and exclude indigenous traders and retailers from the market. Again, another aspect where China has impacted negatively by destroying Nigeria's democratic structures is the issue of illegal mining, stealing of Nigeria's solid minerals. Nigeria has one of the largest concentration of mineral resources in the world. Almost every known mineral resource, almost every known, if you can count 10, 9 of them occur in Nigeria in commercial quantities. Because of corruption, because of inefficiency, because of maladministration, the government has been unable to fully exploit these minerals, and they are lying fallow. So creating opportunities for Chinese-led miners to steal these resources. It doesn't just end there. The government, through its Minister of Solid Minerals, have repeatedly told citizens publicly that the government has evidence that these illegal miners are the primary source of insecurity in Nigeria. I know several parts of Nigeria, especially in the northern region, have been overrun by terrorists, and the government, through its intelligence network, has been able to establish that some of these groups were armed by these foreigners who encourage instability in these oil-rich areas to create a safe passage for their illegal miners, those stealing these solid minerals, to perpetrate their activities, not allowing state actors and institutions to understand and come in and try to see what is going on or try to stop them. So they encourage instability, political violence, insecurity, so that continuous stealing of Nigeria's solid minerals, huge deposits of mineral resources, will continue unabated. And I think I'll be stopping here. Going forward, if there'll be some further questions, I'm ready to provide clarifications. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Amechi. Moving on to the next speaker, Dr. Sriparna Pathak is the Director for Center for Northeast Asian Studies of OP Jindal Global University. Her center focuses on researching Northeast Asian countries through publications, discussions, and conferences. Dr. Pathak is also an associate professor at the university where she teaches on the courses related to international affairs and Chinese foreign policy. Her previous work includes consultancy at the Ministry of External Affairs of India, and she has also served as an assistant professor at Guwahati University, Assam. Shipana ma'am, if you can hear me, over to you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. And thank you, Red Lantern Analytica, for organizing such a brilliant webinar. Now, I'm going to speak on elections, which is the most integral aspect of any democracy, and China's disinformation and foreign interference in elections. Siddharth, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is perfectly visible to us.
Okay. So I think in the chat box as well, there is some question about manipulation of technology and manipulation of social media in order to push out a certain narrative and to influence democratic structures. So I think in that context, elections becomes very important. So it's been just 20 days since the election results in India got declared. The dust is yet to settle down on the biggest democratic exercise. But there have been several threats which the polity faced, particularly from external sources during the elections. Just a few days before the last phase of elections in India, Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, it stated that it has removed a number of Facebook accounts, pages, and groups for violating its policy against coordinated inauthentic behavior. These accounts, groups, and pages originated in China, as has been stated by Meta. These targeted the Sikh community, not just India, but in several other countries as well. This network, which was known as Operation K, operated under the guise of a fictitious activist movement, which aimed to incite pro-Sikh protests. Some of these clusters amplified one another, with most of their engagement coming from their own fake accounts, likely to make this campaign appear more popular than it actually was. Now, this network attempted to manipulate news and current affairs, including images which were likely altered using photo editing tools or generated by AI. Topics included things like floods in Punjab, the Sikh community worldwide, the Khalistan movement, and the criticism of the ruling party or the Indian. So about 2,700 accounts on social media followed one or more of these pages. About 1,300 accounts joined one or more of these groups. 100 accounts followed one or more of these Instagram accounts. So sources in Indian security agencies have also stated that there were certain Pakistani social media accounts which did search targeting of the Sikh community. The work was done by China first, and then it percolated down into the Pakistani social media space and so on. If Meta, if Instagram, Facebook, these platforms were not enough, YouTube India also emerged as a very significant platform for churning out certain narratives which could be aimed at influencing the electorate. So there were 17 employees of YouTube India, and they've been found on record discussing as to how to tweak the algorithm to favor anti-BJP content during the elections, so that the results could be influenced. These employees, they explicitly wrote and spoke about instructions on how to shadow ban any sort of neutral coverage of the Indian elections and to promote an anti-BJP or an anti-Modi sort of narrative. So they are suspected of altering the YouTube algorithm, imposing indiscriminate and arbitrary bans on 93 journalists, 42 channels which reported neutrally during the election. So it was a mammoth task. It was a humongous task. But the impact is yet to be fully known. And Microsoft earlier also in this year had stated that India is at the biggest disadvantage of misinformation and disinformation. Probably we should have been better prepared. India's polity is very vulnerable to disinformation because India is the world's most populated country with a staggering population of 1.4 billion people. There are fissures along the lines of language, class, gender, caste, region. India has more than 50% of its population below the age of 25 and more than 65% below the age of 35. There are more than 850 million internet users in India, and these are statistics from the Internet and Mobile Association of India. This is a great step towards digital connectivity, but this also proves to be a potential for influencing the electorate, because most of the information which this particular segment or the young population, which they get the information from the internet. So once the internet can be manipulated, the electoral preferences can also be manipulated. The most widely used platforms are WhatsApp, Facebook, X or Twitter, as it was known earlier, Instagram, and LinkedIn India. While there are certain precautions which have been seen, which have been put in place by Meta in particular, the fact is that on WhatsApp, the information which goes out, because of encryption details, these cannot be looked at, and this becomes a humongous challenge during elections in particular. There's another problem. While I'm not even going to move into disinformation, let's just talk first about digital literacy. Unfortunately, just 38% of households in rural India are digitally literate. I'm not even going to talk about disinformation and foreign influence and interference, etc. Digital literacy is lacking, first and foremost. Then this gets a little better in the urban areas, because in the urban areas, the digital literacy is at 61%. So it becomes very easy for domestic and foreign actors to sway the electorate, because this is the level that most of the country is at in terms of digital literacy, or the ability to differentiate between what is real news and what is fake news. Now, there are multiple tactics which are used to sway the electorate, and I will use something which Taiwan's Doublethink Lab has often been talking about. And we heard the previous speakers, especially the ones from Taiwan, about the sorts of jobs, the sorts of work which the civil society has done in countering disinformation. It is very important, first and foremost, that the information environment is observed, which is why it becomes important to understand what would be the types of information one must observe and record. There would be conspiracy theories which would be churned out. There would be red herring logic or arguments. There would be existing narratives from the PRC, existing propaganda from the PRC, which maybe 15 years ago would have just been propaganda, but now they are actively used on the information environment. So there is, of course, a link. There would be PRC related actors. It's not very challenging to find out if you do a bit of a deep dive into the websites or into the posts, etc. There would be coordinated and inauthentic behavior. And I'm going to exemplify this with a few posts, with a few screenshots in one of the latter slides. There'll be extraordinary high interactions on certain trending topics. There would be suspicious accounts. And these could all have potentially negative impact on the domestic society. And these would also try to tear apart the relationships between the allies. Talking about relationships between the allies, I'll use an example over here. During elections, I'm assuming in most parts of the world, foreign policy does not become priority number one. It's generally people's own choices and people's own lives, day-to-day lives, which are priorities number one when we cast our vote. However, during the last 5 years of the existing government in India, foreign policy has moved up, because there is an active tying of foreign policy and domestic policy, because economic development can only happen if we have foreign partnerships, FDI, and so on. And the government has actively promoted this and talked about this, and it has brought in certain results. While the elections were going on in India, India sold the first batch of BrahMos missiles to Philippines. And Prime Minister Modi had even talked about it during the elections as to how this is a great step, and this is supporting the friendship between India and Philippines and so on. So one of the contenders in the elections clearly stated this. So this got picked up by a lot of Chinese handles, which started saying that India can never be a net security provider in South Asia or in Southeast Asia, etc., because BrahMos missiles will fail. And they came up with this weird sort of video on TikTok, which, by the way, is banned in India, as to which showed a missile, just falling into some sort of river or ocean or something, And they said that even Indians won't know where their missiles would really go, because no one really knows where the missiles would go. So best of luck, Philippines. So there was an attempt to even tear the relationship between friends, India and Philippines. And this became a focal point because Prime Minister Modi, who was a contender in the elections, he had specifically mentioned. So there were a lot of narratives, and mostly based on these things. Certain narratives, as the very Orientalist view of India as being a land of snakes and snake charmers, or poor, poverty-stricken, heat wave in India, people not going to vote. The relationship between allies is not great, and so on. All of these narratives were put out by Chinese handlers. Now, when I do talk about Chinese handles, this is just one screenshot of one particular narrative. This was done to divide the society on already, problematic lines. Given the fact that religion is a point of fissure in the Indian society, you will see a lot of these handles constantly using the term Hindu nationalism instead of Indian nationalism. So there is the motive to, of course, divide the society further than it already is. So Hindu nationalism, Hindu nationalism. Why I use these screenshots is because many a times it is argued that let Chinese bots, or let Chinese handles write whatever they want to in Chinese. No one in India reads Chinese. So what? But the thing is, AI automatically translates it into English, and if a correlation is done as to how these are picked up by our own, as to how they are picked up in our own information space, they do create certain problems. So there are certain handles which also promote narratives in English. Now, just to show you coordinated and inauthentic behavior, if you just look at the first two photographs, these are photographs of some people who have gone somewhere to vote, who I am very sure who have no interest in foreign policy at all. But the narrative which is used by these handles is that China becomes a hot issue in Indian elections for the first time, clearly trying to show that the ruling party is not capable enough to win the elections on its own, which is why it will use a China card. The imagery is the same imagery, the same narrative, the same hashtag is used. So this is basically coordinated inauthentic behavior. How prepared are we to deal with information manipulation in India? We have the Indian Penal Code, which goes back to the 1990s. We have the IT Act, which goes to 2000, 24 years ago. We have the Disaster Management Act of 2005, but nothing beyond that. And we're sitting in 2024, wherein gray zone warfare has become a very potent challenge. There has not been a very serious study on, how China tries to influence elections. I think Taiwan did a good job. I think others should follow. There is there is a mulling over of having a disinformation bill in India, which it was discussed last year, and I hope sincerely that it comes into place. So I guess I've gone over the timing. So thank you so much for your patience, and back to you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Shipana ma'am, for your elaborative address on this topic. Our fifth speaker for this session, Shri Sujit sir, will be joining very shortly. Since he is a member of parliament, he is also stuck in a meeting, which he will be very soon getting off with. And till then, we can take few of the questions which the participants have sent us. So there is one question which I can see, that is from Meenakshi, and she says that and I think this question can be taken up by Dr. Amici, and that is that how are African nations responding to Chinese influence operations, and what strategies have been effective? Dr. Amici, if you can hear me, you can answer this question, please.
Okay, I can hear you. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sir, your voice is not audible. Yeah, your voice is not audible. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sure. So, sir, the question is, how are African nations responding to Chinese influence operations, and what strategies have been effective?
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. Well, I can tell you that there's been no coordinated response from various governments in Africa. The governments across Africa, different governments of different countries, appear helpless. For instance, I didn't raise the issue of Chinese loan. Most African countries are heavily indebted to China. They procure loans for infrastructure, airport terminals, port facilities, new railways and all that. And within this loan agreement, there's this proviso, this caveat, this provision that is always added, that China can take over these assets upon the failure of African countries to pay back this loan. We have seen cases that have come to reality in about 3 African countries where China has taken over the national assets of these countries, railways, ports, and other, because of inability of the governments to repay back the loans the Chinese used to construct it. So it's been a helpless situation. In Nigeria, there was this public outcry over the inclusion of that clause in the loan Nigeria procured from China for the modernization of its rail system. It was hidden from the public, but when it leaked out, there was a public media outcry. The government came out to accept that it was there, but it gave guarantees that it will not get to that. But unfortunately, we are on that path. Sooner or later, it will become glaring that the Nigerian government cannot pay back loan, and it runs the risk of China taking over. So there's been no response from the government. Much of the response we have seen have come from media and civil society. This group of people across Africa, not just Nigeria, they have sensed the danger. They have insisted, they have been campaigning, insisting on transparency even before these loan agreements are drawn and signed. They insist on full disclosure and public input into these loans before they are consummated, because most of these loan agreements were secretly and hurriedly executed in such a way that the people didn't even know what was happening. So there have been this uncoordinated resistance from media and civil society. What we are working on towards, and of course some other partners in some other Africa countries, to sustain this pushback, not just to sustain it, to form alliances among NGOs, civil society organizations, media organizations, so that they will present a louder voice towards countering this malign influence. That's where it has stopped for now. So over the years, we hope to see the intensity by the civil society, by the media, to insist that government do the right thing, uphold utmost transparency in processes, take necessary action, for instance, on the issue of stealing of solid mineral resources, take action, appropriate actions, take action to protect and protect these minerals, stop the criminals from stealing them, and punish those that have been arrested and indicted for doing so. For that of the solid mineral, there have been some progress. Just about 2 months ago, 2 Chinese nationals were jailed by the courts for stealing our minerals. We hope to see many of these actions enveloped in the days, weeks, and years to come.
Thank you, sir, for your answer for this question. Next question, I think, can be taken up by Dr. Lannon Chang, since his expertise is on cyber resilience. So this question is that how important is international cooperation in countering PRC's influence operation, and what forms should this collaboration take? And are there any successful example of such multilateral efforts to counter these influence operations?
Well, thanks for the question. This is a very big question, and we do try to build a good alliance. Like there are some supporting group doing, say, countering foreign information manipulation and influence. And we also, like, at Double Thing, we also have a big event every year. That's where I met Sabrina, the China in the World conference. We gather all everyone who is interested in researching in China or China impact to come together and do the brainstorming, understanding what is happening, and come up with countermeasures. And how successful we are, what I can say is that there are a lot of things we still need to do, and there's still a lot of things that we need to work on. And one of the key thing here is while we're talking about international collaborations, a lot of times we're talking about going through the international organizations such as UN, Interpol, or other formal international organizations. Unfortunately, one of the country or entity, whichever you like, Taiwan, is never be able to be part of those international organizations. So here we are facing a situation that the country, they are facing the more cyber attacks and a huge amount of disinformation from China, are not able to share their experience or to share what their countermeasures through the formal channels. And the reason why I briefly touch on what Taiwan is doing with American Institute in Taiwan, AIT, and other organizations, other governments in Taiwan, called GCTF, the Global Collaboration and Training Frameworks Workshop. So through this way, they are trying to build up more capacities or collaborations through more so-called more informal channel, but not ignoring Taiwan in that space.
Thank you, sir, for this answer. And moving on to the next question, there is a question which I could see, and that can be answered by Dr. Roger Liu. So that is that how does PRC influence operations differs when targeting different regions or countries?
Okay, I thought you were going to take up the
Sir,
other
we
question,
cannot
but
hear you,
okay.
I believe.
You cannot hear me? No?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's okay, right? Is it okay now?
Yeah. Yes, it's okay now, sir.
Okay, different regions. Well, I different regions. Well, I know what's happening in Taiwan, but in other countries, actually, well, what I can tell you is that, well, in Taiwan, this is the battlefield that the parties there has been familiar with, because we speak the same language, we are in the same or similar, very similar cultural context. So they know how to manipulate all these kind of elements psychologically, right? And in media. In other places, what I've been thinking about is in Southeast Asia, actually, they are trying to reach out to the Chinese ethnicities. Like in Malaysia and in Singapore, there are a lot of retired, old generation senior citizens who are even in the, either in the retiring mode or they have nothing to do. So either these people are being recruited as what they call the 50 Cent Army in some sense, or they are becoming the sympathizers of the Chinese Communist Party, and they just create some kind of messages or internet media posts from their side. So especially on YouTube, when you see a lot of replied or comments, under different videotapes or clips regarding Taiwan and China, promoting the Chinese ideas, actually are not all from mainland China, because if you want to post something from mainland China, actually you will have to use the VPN. But you don't have to do that when you are in Singapore or Malaysia. So these people can be used as what they call the overseas 50 Cent Army against Taiwan, if there are not enough people in Taiwan. But well, and there's something that we have paid attention to is the application of artificial intelligence like the some LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT actually facilitated the cultural offensives initiated by the party state, because now they have the opportunity to overcome the language barrier. So now they can post in multiple languages in a natural way without being detected. This is something that a lot of think tanks have discovered. Um, I mean, regarding what CCP has been doing. So I think for the future, of course, the propaganda department of China actually has been designing their tactics based on different cultural standards or structures of their targets. Of course, you will see a lot of different variations, but what I have shared is what I have observed. Maybe later we can discuss more cases. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And since we have received many of the questions, so we'll not be able to take all the questions. But that being said, I think the next question can be asked to Shripanna ma'am. And that question is that, just a second, I have lost between the questions. Yeah. So how do technology and social media platforms facilitate PRC's influence operations? And what measures can tech companies implement to better protect democratic processes from this foreign influence?
That's a very interesting question. See, China is not a democracy, but it understands democracies really well. It understands the fact that democratic countries have access to the internet and have access to social media. People use it for expressing themselves. So once you put in a certain idea, or you keep bombarding people, or you keep bombarding the electorate with a certain idea, it will become the norm, right? Meta was, very efficient to take down those posts which I mentioned on Facebook, on Instagram, and so on. But the fact is, this wasn't a success case as far as YouTube goes. India is still trying to talk to YouTube that why was the algorithm being tweaked when certain journalists were shadow banned, etc. So that negotiation has to continue. That if platforms have to operate in democracies, they need to operate in a democratic manner. One more problem which happened this year and which deeply divided our electorate was the emergence of deep fakes. Now, deep fakes are very easy to create. They are also, in India, they're now called cheap fakes, because you don't even need very high-tech sort of platforms or tools, etc., to create a deep fake. You can just, you just use a little bit of, if you have a bit of technological understanding, it's very easy to create cheap fakes, which is why so many of them came out. There was one of Amir Khan. A police FIR was lodged. There was one of Ranveer Singh, FIR was lodged. There was one of PM Modi, who said that basically vote for the opposition party. That was, of course, a deep fake. There was one of Amit Shah, in which the deepfake basically said that the constitution would be changed, whereas that was not what he said. We were a bit slow in responding to that. I think the normal procedure that we generally follow in India is that we file a police case, then the police reaches out to the platform, then it is taken down. It took 2 to 3 days to take that down, but the damage was done. We should have taken cognizance of the fact when Microsoft warned us early on in the year that India is at the biggest disadvantage of disinformation from foreign actors, from domestic actors. We really should have taken some sort of cognizance. To this, I'll just add something. I think there was one more question just for me about the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Look, it's not come into, it's not an act yet. It's still a bill. It was proposed last year. The segment on disinformation is, again, it's going by the same rules that we've had. Again, the police is going to imprison people for spreading malicious news, fake news. These are all very domestic oriented. Foreign actors are engaging in gray zone warfare. We don't really have a mechanism to deal with that. What could we do? Maybe take a leaf out of EU's whole FEMI sort of framework, foreign interference and manipulation of information, wherein they talk about a certain toolkit which the government or civil society organizations can use, so that you have evidence. Once you have evidence, you can reach out to the tech companies and you can have that collaboration so that your democratic space remains democratic and China doesn't infiltrate. So let's hope for the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Sri Sujit Kumar sir is regrettably not be able to join this meeting as his session has extended. He has extended his well wishes to all our esteemed speakers and the participants who have joined us today. And he will also be sending his short address on this topic very soon. So that will be shared by our social media handle. That being said, we are now approaching the end of this session as the time is limited and we plan to end the session at 7 p.m. So I'll now like to invite a team member from Red Lantern Analytica, Shalini, to extend the vote of thanks. Shalini, if you can hear me, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. A very, very good evening to everyone present here. On behalf of the entire team of Red Lantern Analytica, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to all the esteemed speakers for their gracious presence today and their invaluable contribution to the success of this event. Dr. Lennon Chang's exceptional insights regarding the dangerous cyber warfare being played out against Taiwan by the CCP greatly enhanced our knowledge regarding the topic. Sir, your expertise and insights on various such issues immensely resonated with our audience. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Roger Liu's interactive presentation and in-depth analysis of this on the so-called potential full-scale invasion to solve the Taiwan issue left a lasting impression on all of us. Thank you so much for such an enriching experience, sir. Dr. Amchi's commendable talk on the subject was truly enlightening for us. It was a delight listening to your words of wisdom, sir. Thank you so much. Dr. Shriparna Pathak's outstanding inputs and real world examples on various issues like the CCP spreading disinformation in India's elections and the grey zone warfare kept our audience enthusiastically engaged throughout. We are truly indebted to you, ma'am, for your significant contributions. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the participants for being a part of this event and putting forth such important questions. And a big thanks to the entire team of RLA for successfully conducting this webinar. Once again, I would like to thank all our speakers for gracing this event with their charming presence. All of you have been really kind with your precious time for this webinar. Thank you so much. Over to you, Siddharth sir.
I'd like to add on this that not just the team of Red Lantern Analytica, but the team of Center for Northeast Asian Studies of OP Jindal Global University is also doing a commendable work and have collaborated with us for this webinar, and we are extremely thankful to them for that. That being said, with the due permission of our respected speakers, we can now bring this session to a close.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, ma'am.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Lennon. Thank you, Amici. And we'll now bring this session to a close. Thanks.